Layla wiped the counter again, her hands sticky from the syrup that had spilled during the morning rush. The diner was small and old, with a few cracked tiles on the floor and the faint smell of fried food lingering in the air. But to her, it felt like home. She had worked here for 3 years, and every day was the same, yet somehow different. The regulars knew her by name and often asked about her younger brother, who she raised since their parents had passed away. Despite the long hours, the low pay, and the endless cleaning, she never complained aloud. She had learned long ago that kindness and patience went further than anger or frustration. It was 10:30 in the morning, and the first wave of customers had already come and gone. Layla took a moment to breathe, leaning on the counter and glancing out the window at the busy street. Cars honked, people hurried to work, and delivery trucks rumbled by. Somewhere in the distance a dog barked, and a child's laughter carried on the wind. She smiled faintly, remembering her own brother running through their tiny apartment, chasing after their old scruffy cat. Life had been hard, but she had learned to find small moments of joy in between the struggle. By 11, the diner began filling up again. The lunch crowd was trickling in, office workers, construction laborers, and a few students grabbing a quick bite before class. Layla moved gracefully, taking orders, pouring coffee, and setting plates on tables. Her manager, a gruff man named Henry, rarely spoke unless it was to tell her to move faster or clean something. But she didn't mind. She liked being busy. It kept her mind off the bills she had to pay and the looming deadlines for rent and utilities. Then, just as the clock struck noon, he walked in. The man she had started noticing a few months ago. He always arrived at the same time, sat at the same booth by the window, and ordered the same thing: a simple sandwich with a side of fries and a black coffee. There was nothing flashy about him, nothing to suggest he was anything more than an ordinary person trying to get a meal. He was quiet, polite, and had a kind face with a soft smile. Layla had watched him for weeks, curious about his routine but never daring to speak more than necessary. That day, as she took his order, she noticed him fumbling through his pockets after reaching for his wallet. His expression changed slightly, a flicker of worry crossing his face. He looked up at her, embarrassed. I forgot my wallet," he said quietly. Layla felt a pang of sympathy. Life had thrown plenty of hard moments her way, and she knew what it felt like to be caught without enough money for even a simple meal. Without thinking, she smiled and said, "That's okay. Don't worry about it. I've got you today." He looked at her in surprise. "Are you sure?" he asked softly. "Absolutely," she replied. "Sit down and enjoy your lunch." He thanked her quietly and settled into his seat, still looking slightly flustered. Layla returned to the counter, her heart warm despite the long day ahead. She didn't expect anything in return. She just wanted to help. It became a small ritual, one that would grow into a daily occurrence without either of them fully realizing it. Days turned into weeks, and Layla found herself covering his lunch whenever he seemed short on cash. Sometimes it was a forgotten wallet. Other times it was just a fleeting look of concern on his face that told her he needed help. She never judged him, never asked questions. She just did what she felt was right. And he in turn began to notice her kindness in ways he hadn't expected. He would leave a small thank you note or a tiny gift like a pastry or a single flower, without ever revealing his identity. The mystery and the thoughtfulness intrigued her, though she didn't know why he was doing it. Layla's life outside the diner was no less challenging. She woke up before sunrise to make breakfast for her brother, pack his lunch for school, and clean the apartment before heading to work. Her days were long, filled with physical labor and mental exhaustion, but she carried herself with quiet dignity. She didn't complain to friends, didn't post about her struggles online. She simply kept moving forward one day at a time. She had dreams, of course. Dreams of a life where bills weren't a constant source of stress, where she could take her brother to the park without counting every penny, where she could sleep without worrying about rent. But those dreams seemed distant, almost impossible. Yet helping the quiet man at the diner gave her a small sense of purpose, a reminder that she could make a difference in someone's life, even in the smallest way. One afternoon, as Layla wiped down the tables, she noticed him staring out the window, lost in thought. He seemed heavier than usual, as if something was weighing on his mind. She approached him cautiously, careful not to intrude. "Everything okay?" she asked gently. He looked up, his eyes meeting hers with a mix of gratitude and something she couldn't quite place. "Yes, thank you. You always seem to know when someone needs a little kindness," he said softly. His words made her heart skip a beat, though she tried to hide it. They shared a brief, comfortable silence. She returned to the counter, but she found herself glancing at him more often now, wondering what his story was. There was something about him that felt familiar, something that drew her in without her understanding why. And though she didn't realize it, she was beginning to care more deeply than she had intended. Meanwhile, he was paying attention to every little thing she did, the way she laughed when a regular made a silly joke, the way her eyes lit up when she talked about her brother, the gentle way she handled the rush of orders with calm efficiency. He admired her resilience, her patience, and her warmth. For him, she was a light in a world that often felt cold and impersonal. Weeks passed, and their routine became something of a silent companionship. She continued to cover his lunch without expecting anything, and he continued to leave small tokens of gratitude without revealing himself. Their connection was subtle but undeniable, built on unspoken understanding and quiet gestures. One day, as the diner was closing, Layla found a small note tucked under the plate she had served him. It read, "Thank you for your kindness. It means more than you know." She held it in her hands, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. She didn't know who had written it, but she felt a strange sense of happiness. It was a simple acknowledgement, yet it made all the exhaustion and struggle of her day feel worth it. Her thoughts often wandered to him during quiet moments. Who was he? Why was he always so kind? She had no idea that he was a man of immense wealth, a self-made millionaire who had chosen to hide his fortune to find genuine human connection. All she knew was the man sitting quietly in her diner every day, someone she had grown to care for without even realizing it, even on her hardest days. When the tips were low and the customers demanding, she found herself smiling at the thought of him. The simple act of helping him had become a highlight of her routine, a small piece of light in her challenging world. And little did she know, he was feeling the same way, admiring her from afar, touched by her kindness and drawn to her warmth. As the sun set and the neon sign outside flickered on, Layla finished her shift and locked the diner doors. She walked home with a tired but contented heart, thinking about the small but meaningful connection she had built with a man she barely knew. It was a strange, beautiful feeling, one that made the hardships of her day feel lighter and her life feel a little brighter. That night, as she helped her brother with his homework and prepared a simple dinner, she found herself wondering what tomorrow would bring. Would he come back? Would she see his familiar, kind smile again? She didn't know, but she hoped. And in that hope, there was a quiet joy that carried her through the evening, reminding her that even small acts of kindness could create ripples far larger than she could imagine. Layla went to bed that night, feeling a mixture of exhaustion and contentment. The day had been long, filled with the usual challenges of her life, but also touched by moments of quiet beauty and connection. She closed her eyes, thinking about the man who came to her diner every day, the one whose lunch she had started sponsoring without a second thought. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing for certain. Kindness had a way of finding its own reward, sometimes in the most unexpected places, and so, with the soft hum of the city outside her window and the faint smell of the diner lingering in her mind, Layla drifted into sleep, unaware of the life-changing connection that was quietly growing in the small diner she called home. The days grew warmer as spring settled over the city. Layla moved through her routines with a quiet determination that never seemed to fade. She woke early to help her brother get ready for school, prepared breakfast, packed his lunch, and then made her way to the diner, where the morning rush waited for her with its usual mix of impatience and chatter. The diner had become more than just a job for her. It was a place where she could pour herself into her work, where her effort made a visible difference, and where, somehow, life felt a little lighter despite its challenges. Ethan, the quiet man who had been a constant in her routine, continued to arrive every day around noon. He remained a figure of quiet curiosity and gentle gratitude. Layla had started noticing little things about him, the way he adjusted his coat neatly when he sat down, how his fingers lingered on the edge of the table when he was deep in thought, and the faint smile he gave her whenever their eyes met. She couldn't explain why, but he fascinated her. There was a softness about him, an unspoken depth that seemed out of place in the busy, often harsh city. One day, as the lunch hour began, Layla noticed Ethan looking distracted. His eyes were distant and he seemed unusually tense. She approached the counter near his table, keeping a polite distance. "Everything okay today?" she asked softly. Ethan looked up, his expression a mixture of gratitude and something heavier she couldn't name. "I'll be fine thanks to you," he said quietly. He didn't elaborate and Layla didn't press. She had learned that sometimes kindness was enough, and words weren't always necessary. She returned to the counter, glancing at him periodically. She noticed a few small changes. He now lingered over his meal a little longer, sometimes reading a worn notebook he kept in his coat pocket, and other times staring out the window as if he were looking for something beyond the city streets. She couldn't help but feel a quiet curiosity and concern. Days passed in this way, a delicate balance of routine and subtle observation. Layla continued to cover his meals when needed, never expecting acknowledgement beyond a simple thank you. But Ethan had begun leaving small notes and gifts without ever revealing himself directly. One afternoon, she found a tiny bouquet of wildflowers on her counter with a note that said, "For your kindness. It makes the world brighter." She didn't know who had left them. She only knew that it felt sincere, heartfelt, and personal. The gesture left her with a warmth that lingered throughout the day. She wondered if it was Ethan, but she didn't dare assume. She placed the flowers in a small glass jar on the counter, smiling at their unexpected beauty. It was the kind of moment that reminded her of why small acts of generosity mattered. Ethan, meanwhile, observed her reactions quietly. He noticed the way her eyes lit up when she discovered the flowers, how she adjusted the jar to face the sunlight streaming through the window, and how she seemed to take a moment to appreciate the gesture fully. It was not her wealth, her status, or anything material that drew him in. It was her sincerity, her patience, and the quiet strength she carried despite her daily struggles. Outside the diner, Layla's life continued with its familiar challenges. She spent evenings helping her brother with homework, managing household chores, and catching up on bills that always seemed to be one step ahead. She rarely had time to think about herself, but she found small moments of joy where she could, watching a sunset from their tiny balcony, laughing at her brother's jokes, or savoring a quiet cup of tea at the end of the day. And now there was a new, gentle curiosity that had entered her life, the mysterious kindness of someone who seemed to see her, really see her, in a way that no one else did. One afternoon, as the diner was unusually busy, a minor incident occurred. A customer had spilled coffee, causing a small commotion. Layla moved quickly, cleaning up the mess while keeping the line moving. Ethan watched her from his booth, his eyes following her every move. There was a grace in the way she handled the chaos, a calm determination that seemed to soothe the storm around her. He found himself admiring her silently, wishing there was a way to make her life easier, to relieve some of the constant weight she carried. After the rush, Ethan left another note, this one tucked carefully under his plate. It read, "You make even the hardest days feel lighter. Thank you for who you are." Layla found it as she cleared the table, her hands momentarily pausing in the routine of her work. She held the note, her heart warm, and felt a connection that words couldn't fully describe. She didn't know the man behind the note, but the sentiment resonated deeply. Her friends and coworkers began noticing a change in her demeanor. She smiled more often, carried a quiet lightness with her even during the busiest shifts, and seemed more animated than usual. They teased her gently, asking if she had a secret admirer. Layla laughed softly, brushing off the question. She didn't want to attach expectations to something she didn't fully understand. It was enough to feel the warmth, the small ripple of kindness that had entered her life. Meanwhile, Ethan continued his quiet observations. He learned more about her without ever intruding, listening to her conversations with coworkers, noting the small stories she shared about her brother, and watching the way she treated the customers with genuine care. He admired her resilience, the way she maintained dignity despite the hardships she faced, and the way she gave of herself without expecting anything in return. Each day his admiration grew, quietly transforming into something deeper. One evening, after a particularly long day at the diner, Layla sat on the small steps outside, her apron still dusted with crumbs from the day's work. She sipped her coffee, feeling the cool breeze brush against her face, and thought about the mysterious notes, the tiny flowers, and the quiet presence of the man who had become part of her routine. She wondered who he was, what his life was like, and why he had chosen to connect with her in such a subtle but meaningful way. As she sat there, lost in thought, she didn't notice Ethan watching from across the street. He admired her from a distance, respecting her space, but feeling a growing desire to make her life better in ways that went beyond notes and small gifts. He wanted to show her that her kindness mattered, that the world could be a better place because of people like her. Days turned into weeks, and the bond between them deepened, built on quiet gestures, mutual respect, and an unspoken understanding. Layla continued her acts of kindness, sponsoring his lunches without hesitation, and Ethan continued to leave subtle reminders of his gratitude and admiration. The connection between them grew in silence, each day adding layers of warmth, trust, and curiosity. And in the midst of the ordinary struggles of their lives, there was something extraordinary unfolding. A gentle, unspoken bond was forming between a young woman who gave freely despite hardship, and a man who admired her so deeply that he carefully concealed his own privilege. Neither of them fully understood the power of the connection yet, but the seeds had been planted, and as Layla returned home each evening, tired but quietly content, she carried with her a sense of hope that was new and tender, the hope that kindness, in its simplest form, could lead to something beautiful, something lasting, something real. Spring was slowly giving way to summer, and the city streets shimmered under the warm sun. Layla had settled into the rhythm of her days at the diner, the hours stretching long but familiar. She greeted each customer with her usual warmth, moved from table to table with quiet efficiency, and kept the counter sparkling clean. Her life was still full of responsibilities, still a delicate balance of work, home, and caring for her younger brother. But there was a subtle lightness now, a gentle curiosity about the man who had quietly become a part of her daily routine. Ethan continued to come for his lunch at the same hour each day. He remained calm, polite, and quietly observant. Layla had grown more aware of his presence, noticing the way he tilted his head when he read, the small gestures he made with his hands, and the way his eyes seemed to watch the world with both curiosity and caution. She didn't know why, but she felt a connection to him that went beyond the simple act of covering his meals. It was a feeling she couldn't fully explain, a warmth that touched her heart in unexpected ways. One afternoon, as the diner was unusually busy, Layla found herself particularly exhausted. Orders were coming in faster than usual, and the line of customers stretched to the door. She moved quickly, balancing plates and refilling drinks, her mind focused on keeping everything running smoothly. In the midst of the chaos, she noticed Ethan quietly seated at his usual spot, observing the scene with a calm demeanor. His presence was a small anchor in the storm of her day. After a few moments, he placed a hand on the edge of the counter and offered her a gentle smile. Layla felt a small wave of relief and appreciation. He didn't say anything, but the simple gesture reminded her that someone noticed her efforts. Someone saw her dedication and kindness. It was a rare feeling in her life, where most of her days were filled with unacknowledged work and constant worry. Once the rush had passed, Ethan left another note on the table, carefully tucked under his plate. This time it read, "Your strength and kindness are inspiring. Thank you for letting me be part of your world." Layla discovered it moments later, her fingers brushing over the words. She felt her chest tighten with emotion, a mixture of gratitude and an unfamiliar flutter of curiosity. She didn't know who was behind the note, but she sensed sincerity in every word. It was small moments like these that made her day feel lighter. That reminded her there was goodness and connection in the world despite its challenges. Outside the diner, Layla's life remained full of ordinary struggles. She helped her brother with schoolwork, managed the household chores, and dealt with the constant pressure of bills and rent. But now, she carried with her a quiet sense of hope, the feeling that kindness could create unexpected beauty. She often thought about the man who left the notes and small gifts, wondering who he was, why he was so thoughtful, and what kind of life he led. There was a mystery to him, a depth that intrigued her without making her feel fearful or anxious. Ethan, meanwhile, continued to watch her quietly, never imposing, never revealing too much. He had seen her fatigue, the way she pushed through long days, and the way she cared for others without hesitation. He admired her resilience and patience, and he wanted to find a way to ease her burdens without disrupting her dignity. He left notes, small gifts, and gestures of encouragement, but always kept his identity hidden. He didn't want her kindness to be influenced by his wealth or status. He wanted her to see him as a person, not as a millionaire who could change her life with money. One day, during a particularly quiet afternoon at the diner, Layla found herself sitting by the window during a short break. She held her cup of coffee and watched the world outside, lost in thought. Her mind wandered to the notes, the flowers, and the subtle gestures of kindness that had quietly woven themselves into her life. She felt a growing connection to the mysterious figure, a sense that someone truly understood and appreciated her. It was a comforting feeling, one that added a layer of warmth to her otherwise demanding life. Ethan noticed her sitting alone, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his lips. He admired her reflection in the window, the way she seemed lost in thought yet calm, the way she held herself with quiet strength. He wanted to speak to her, to reveal a fraction of his feelings, but he hesitated. He feared that revealing much too soon might disrupt the delicate bond they had formed. Instead, he left another note, subtle yet meaningful. "You deserve happiness, and I hope the days ahead bring you the peace and joy you give to others." Layla found the note later, her fingers brushing over the carefully written words. She felt a strange mixture of curiosity and emotion. The notes had become more than just simple messages. They were a reflection of empathy, understanding, and a desire to connect. She began to look forward to seeing the man, to the small exchanges and the silent companionship that had grown between them. As the days passed, Layla and Ethan's connection deepened in subtle ways. She noticed the quiet attentiveness in his eyes, the small gestures that revealed care and thoughtfulness. He noticed the strength in her movements, the kindness in her words, and the resilience that defined her life. They were learning about each other without words, building trust and familiarity in a way that felt natural and unforced. One evening, as Layla closed the diner and walked home with her brother, she reflected on the small moments that had become significant in her life. The notes, the flowers, the quiet presence of a man who seemed to understand her in ways others did not. All of it created a tapestry of connection and warmth. She didn't know his story, didn't know his name, or why he had chosen to be part of her daily life, but she felt grateful. And in that gratitude, there was a budding sense of hope and affection, subtle yet undeniable. Ethan, observing from afar, felt the same growing emotions. He admired her for her strength, her kindness, and her ability to navigate life's challenges with grace. He wanted to show her that the world could be a place of goodness and support, that she was valued not for her struggles or her circumstances, but simply for who she was. And yet, he remained cautious, letting their connection grow naturally, giving her the space to feel, wonder, and discover the bond between them. As summer approached, their routines continued, each day adding layers of warmth, understanding, and quiet companionship. Layla's acts of kindness, small as they were, became a bridge between their worlds. She continued to sponsor his lunches, never questioning his background, never expecting anything beyond a simple thank you. And he, in turn, continued to leave gestures of appreciation, building a silent narrative of connection and admiration. The city moved around them, bustling with life. Yet within the walls of the diner, there was a gentle sanctuary where two people found solace in each other's presence. Layla's heart, though weary from daily struggles, felt lighter. Ethan's admiration, though silent, grew stronger. And neither of them fully understood the profound impact these daily interactions were having, the quiet bond forming that would eventually lead to a deeper, life-changing connection. Layla often thought about the future, wondering if life would ever become easier, if the small moments of joy could expand into lasting happiness. She didn't know the man's story, his wealth, or his reasons for being in her life, but she felt a growing trust, a sense that someone genuinely cared. And that trust, fragile yet powerful, was shaping her days in ways she hadn't anticipated. Ethan, carefully observing her from a distance, knew that revealing too much too soon could disrupt the delicate balance they had created. He wanted to find the right moment, the right way to show her that the world could be kind, that she could be appreciated, and that their connection was genuine. Until then, he continued with small, thoughtful gestures, letting the relationship unfold naturally, quietly, and meaningfully. And so the days passed, each filled with ordinary challenges, quiet triumphs, and small, significant moments of connection. Layla and Ethan, though worlds apart in circumstance, were drawn together by empathy, respect, and the subtle power of human kindness. Their story was unfolding slowly, deliberately, with each act of care, each shared glance, and each note left behind. And in the quiet moments, they were learning that true connection could exist in the simplest of gestures, that love could grow in the spaces between words, and that sometimes the most profound relationships begin without fanfare, quietly, in the ordinary rhythm of life. Summer was at its peak, and the city felt alive with the energy of long days and warm nights. Layla continued her routine at the diner, juggling the bustle of customers with the quiet care she put into her work. The smell of fresh coffee and sizzling meals filled the air, a comforting constant in her otherwise unpredictable life. She moved from table to table, her focus steady, her smile genuine, even as fatigue pressed at her shoulders and the worries of rent, bills, and her younger brother's needs loomed in her mind. Ethan continued to come daily, quietly observing her as she navigated the chaos of the diner. The small notes and thoughtful gestures had become a silent language between them, a bridge of understanding and mutual respect. Layla had grown to anticipate them, feeling a thrill of warmth whenever she discovered a note or a small token of appreciation. She didn't know who had left them, but she felt the sincerity behind each gesture. And now, more than ever, she felt a deep, unspoken connection to the man who had become such a quiet, constant presence in her life. One afternoon, the diner was busy beyond expectation. A group of construction workers had come in, laughter and loud voices filling the room, and a few families trickled in behind them. Layla worked tirelessly, moving with precision, balancing plates, refilling drinks, and keeping the energy flowing. She caught Ethan's eye briefly across the room, and he gave her a small, reassuring smile. It was a gesture that gave her a moment of calm, a reminder that she was seen and appreciated even amid the frenzy. As she returned to the counter, she found a note left under his plate. She opened it carefully, her hands trembling slightly from both fatigue and anticipation. The note read, "I wish I could show you how much I see and appreciate you. You make the world brighter without even realizing it." She held the note close, feeling a warmth in her chest. The words were simple, yet they carried a depth of emotion that resonated with her soul. She didn't know who had written it, but she felt a surge of curiosity and longing to understand the person behind the gestures. Later that evening, Layla walked home with her brother, the sky painted in streaks of orange and pink. The city buzzed around them, but she felt a quiet bubble of peace enveloping her. She thought about the notes, the flowers, and the mysterious man who had touched her life in ways she couldn't fully explain. She wondered who he was, what kind of life he led, and why he had chosen to connect with her so thoughtfully. There was a mystery to him, a depth that intrigued her and made her heart race with anticipation and emotion. Ethan, meanwhile, was observing her from a distance, careful not to intrude, yet feeling a growing urgency to reveal himself. He had admired her resilience and kindness for months, each day deepening his affection and respect. He had left notes, flowers, and subtle tokens of appreciation, but the moment had come where he needed to show her that his admiration and care were real, that his life could support hers without altering the purity of her kindness. The following week, an unexpected opportunity arose. Layla discovered that her rent for the apartment had been paid in full, along with a small contribution toward her brother's school supplies. At first, she was puzzled, thinking it must have been an anonymous Good Samaritan. She never imagined it would be Ethan, a man she had come to care for, whose wealth and identity she had no inkling of. The realization began to dawn slowly, stirring a mix of curiosity, gratitude, and a hint of apprehension. One evening, after the diner had closed, Ethan finally approached her. He walked in quietly, wearing his usual simple attire. But there was a confidence in his posture, a warmth in his expression. Layla looked up from wiping the counter and froze slightly, her heart skipping a beat. He held her gaze with a sincerity that made her feel both nervous and safe. "Layla," he began softly, "I think it's time I stop hiding." She blinked, unsure of what he meant. His eyes held a gentle intensity, the kind that made it impossible to look away. "Hiding from what?" she asked, her voice cautious but curious. "I've been coming here for months," he said, his tone calm, deliberate. "I've watched you every day, admired your strength, your kindness, and your heart. I never revealed who I am because I wanted to meet you without my wealth changing how you saw me. But now I need you to know the truth. I am the one who has been leaving the notes, the flowers, and helping with your bills. I am also a millionaire." Layla's eyes widened, a mixture of shock, disbelief, and confusion washing over her. She stepped back slightly, her mind racing to process the revelation. The quiet man whose lunch she had sponsored, the one she had grown to care for without even knowing his name, was not who she had assumed. Her heart pounded with conflicting emotions, gratitude, astonishment, and a strange sense of betrayal. "Why?" she asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Ethan's gaze softened. "Because I wanted to know you for who you are, not for my money. I wanted our connection to be real, built on understanding, respect, and care, not influenced by wealth or status. And I wanted to give you support without taking away your dignity." Layla's mind swirled with emotions. She felt anger for being kept in the dark, yet she also felt a deep appreciation for his honesty and the care he had shown. Slowly, the warmth that had drawn her to him over months began to resurface, mixed now with a cautious curiosity about the life he led beyond the diner. She wanted to understand him, to learn why he had chosen her and how their connection had grown without the interference of his wealth. Ethan reached out, gently taking her hand. "I never wanted to manipulate you or make you feel obligated," he said. "I just admired you, respected you, and wanted to show you that kindness can create beauty in the world. And now I want you to know that my feelings are real. I care about you, truly, deeply." Layla looked into his eyes, seeing the sincerity and vulnerability there. She felt her heart soften, realizing that despite the shock and complexity of the revelation, their bond had always been genuine. The notes, the flowers, and the quiet gestures had not been about wealth or power. They had been about admiration, respect, and connection. And in that realization, her confusion began to transform into trust and affection. They spent the next hours talking, slowly and carefully, sharing stories and experiences. Ethan explained his life, the responsibilities, and the choices that had led him to hide his wealth. Layla shared her struggles, her dreams, and the challenges of raising her brother alone. The conversation was honest, raw, and filled with moments of vulnerability that strengthened their connection. By the end of the evening, Layla felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in months. She realized that while the revelation of his wealth had been shocking, it had not changed the essence of their relationship. The admiration, kindness, and quiet love they had built were real, grounded in human connection rather than material circumstance. And Ethan, for his part, felt relief and hope, knowing that his honesty had not destroyed the bond but had instead allowed it to grow deeper and more authentic. In the days that followed, their interactions continued, but now with a new level of understanding and openness. Layla no longer felt the subtle tension of mystery and uncertainty. She saw Ethan for who he was, and he saw her for who she was. The diner remained a space of comfort and routine, but it was now also a place of shared laughter, gentle conversation, and moments of quiet joy. Their connection, once built on silent gestures and notes, now flourished with openness and trust. The city outside continued its busy rhythm, but within the walls of the diner, something extraordinary had taken root. Two people from different worlds had found each other through kindness, empathy, and mutual respect. They were learning that love could emerge in unexpected ways, that trust could grow in the spaces between words, and that the smallest gestures of care could lead to profound, life-changing connections. Layla, once cautious and weary, now felt a renewed sense of hope and excitement for the future. Ethan, once careful and reserved, now felt a deep sense of relief and joy, knowing that his admiration had been met with understanding and affection. And together, they began to explore the possibilities of a life built on genuine connection, shared respect, and the quiet magic of kindness that had brought them together in the first place. The revelation of Ethan's identity had shifted everything, yet nothing changed about the way Layla and he felt for each other. Their connection, once built on small gestures and silent admiration, had grown into something real and tangible. Layla had come to understand that the notes, flowers, and support had been acts of genuine care, not influenced by wealth or status, and that realization filled her with a quiet happiness she had never expected. The diner, once a place of routine and exhaustion, now felt like a space of shared understanding and the beginning of something extraordinary. Days after the revelation, Layla and Ethan continued to meet at the diner, but the dynamic between them had shifted. No longer were there only notes or subtle gestures. Now there were conversations, laughter, and shared stories. They discovered the little quirks and habits that had always fascinated them. Ethan's fondness for quiet observation, Layla's ability to find joy in small things, and the way both of them had learned to navigate life with resilience. The diner became a haven, a place where they could be themselves, away from the pressures of the outside world. Ethan made sure to remain patient and respectful. He didn't want to overwhelm Layla or make her feel uncomfortable with sudden displays of wealth or influence. Instead, he continued his quiet attentions, now openly engaged in conversation and companionship. They talked about their dreams, their struggles, and the moments that had shaped them. Layla shared stories of her brother, the challenges she faced raising him alone, and the small victories that kept her moving forward. Ethan listened intently, offering encouragement, understanding, and empathy. Their conversations became a foundation of trust and intimacy, built on honesty and mutual respect. Layla found herself smiling more, feeling lighter and experiencing a sense of hope she hadn't known in years. The presence of someone who truly saw her for who she was, not for her job, her struggles, or anything material, brought a warmth and confidence that extended beyond the diner. She began to envision a future where challenges were faced together, where support and understanding could create a life that felt full and meaningful. She realized that her acts of kindness had never been unnoticed, that they had sparked something genuine and beautiful in another person's heart. Ethan, in turn, felt a profound sense of relief and joy. His admiration for Layla had deepened into love, a quiet, steady feeling that he wanted to nurture carefully. He recognized her strength, her empathy, and the authenticity that made her remarkable. He also understood the importance of balance, of giving support without undermining her independence or sense of dignity. Their relationship grew slowly, naturally, and with care, allowing each to appreciate the other fully. The city outside remained busy, indifferent to the subtle changes in their lives, yet within the walls of the diner, a gentle transformation was taking place. Customers came and went, the clatter of dishes and conversation forming a comforting background. But Layla and Ethan found moments of quiet intimacy amidst the routine. They shared meals, exchanged smiles, and talked about everything from trivial observations to deeper reflections on life. Each interaction strengthened the bond that had begun with small acts of kindness and curiosity. One evening, after a particularly long day at the diner, they sat together outside on the steps watching the sun dip below the horizon. The sky was painted in streaks of gold and pink, and the city hummed with life. Layla rested her head on Ethan's shoulder, feeling the steadiness of his presence and the sincerity of his care. She realized that despite the challenges of her daily life, she was no longer navigating them alone. The quiet companionship they had built had grown into a partnership of support, respect, and affection. Ethan spoke softly, his words deliberate and filled with meaning. "I never imagined that covering someone's lunch could lead to this," he said, a small smile on his face. "I never imagined that kindness could grow into something so real and profound." Layla looked up at him, her eyes reflecting the fading light. "I didn't either," she admitted. "I never thought my small gestures would touch someone so deeply, or that someone would see me the way you do." Their laughter mingled with the evening air, a sound that felt unburdened and freeing. It was a moment of pure connection, a realization that love and trust could flourish quietly, without grand gestures or expectations. The months of subtle interactions, of notes and flowers and unnoticed acts of care, had culminated in a bond that was strong, genuine, and unshakable. As the days turned into weeks, Layla and Ethan continued to grow together. They shared meals not as waitress and customer, but as companions, friends, and equals. They celebrated small victories, supported each other through challenges, and found joy in the simplicity of daily life. Layla continued to work at the diner, not out of necessity but because she loved it and because it represented a part of her world she wanted to preserve. Ethan respected her choices, encouraging her independence while offering support when needed. Their love story, built on empathy and kindness, became a testament to the power of human connection. They learned that true affection wasn't about material wealth or social status, but about understanding, respect, and shared experiences. Each day brought new moments of discovery, laughter, and warmth, reinforcing the bond that had grown from small acts of generosity and mutual admiration. Layla's younger brother noticed the subtle changes in their lives too. He observed the warmth in their interactions, the laughter that filled the diner and their home, and the stability that Ethan's presence brought. He grew to admire Ethan, not for his wealth but for his genuine care and respect for both Layla and the life they shared. Family dinners became moments of joy, simple yet meaningful, reinforcing the sense of community and love that had developed around them. Ethan also continued his quiet contributions, helping in ways that respected Layla's independence and dignity. Bills were managed with care, unexpected challenges met with thoughtful solutions, and support offered without pressure. Layla appreciated the balance, feeling that her life had gained security and comfort without sacrificing her pride or autonomy. Their partnership became a harmonious blend of love, respect, and mutual growth. One afternoon, as they walked through the city together, hand in hand, Layla reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. The small, seemingly insignificant acts of kindness, the sponsored lunches, the notes, the flowers, had grown into a relationship that was deeper than either could have imagined. She realized that every challenge she had faced, every moment of struggle had prepared her for this connection, for a love built on authenticity and care. Ethan, too, felt a sense of fulfillment and contentment. He had found someone who embodied the qualities he had admired from afar: strength, kindness, empathy, and resilience. Their relationship was a daily practice of understanding and support, a reminder that love could be quiet, steady, and profoundly transformative. He cherished the moments they shared, both grand and mundane, knowing that each contributed to the depth and stability of their bond. Together, they navigated life's challenges with a sense of partnership and shared purpose. The diner remained a place of routine, but it also became a symbol of their journey, a space where love had grown quietly, nurtured by kindness, empathy, and mutual respect. Each day they found new reasons to smile, new ways to support each other, and new moments of joy that reinforced the strength of their connection. As summer gave way to autumn, Layla and Ethan continued to grow together, their bond deepening with every shared experience. They learned to celebrate the ordinary, to find beauty in small moments, and to appreciate the quiet power of human connection. The love that had begun with a simple act of kindness, sponsoring a lunch, had blossomed into a profound, life-changing partnership. In the quiet evenings, when the city streets were filled with the soft glow of streetlights, Layla and Ethan would sit together, reflecting on their journey and dreaming of the future. They spoke of hopes, plans, and the simple pleasures that made life meaningful. Their connection, once built on mystery and subtle gestures, had evolved into a love grounded in trust, respect, and genuine understanding. Through it all, Layla never lost her sense of self, and Ethan never lost his admiration for the woman she was. Their story became a testament to the transformative power of kindness, empathy, and quiet, steady love. They had discovered that the most profound connections often begin in the simplest ways, growing over time through shared experiences, understanding, and care. And so, their journey continued, filled with laughter, love, and the quiet beauty of everyday life. They had found in each other a partner, a confidant, and a source of unwavering support. The diner remained their starting point, a place where a simple act of generosity had sparked a bond that would last a lifetime. Together, they embraced the future, knowing that their love, built on kindness and mutual respect, would guide them through all the challenges and joys that lay ahead. Months passed, and the relationship between Layla and Ethan deepened in ways neither of them could have anticipated. The quiet companionship they had built over lunches, notes, and subtle gestures had blossomed into a steady and warm love, grounded in respect, trust, and shared experiences. Their days were filled with small, meaningful moments, laughter over coffee, quiet walks through the city, and evenings spent sharing stories and dreams. Each day strengthened their connection, proving that love could grow slowly, quietly, and profoundly. Layla continued to work at the diner, her dedication to her job and her brother unwavering. Yet the weight of her responsibilities felt lighter with Ethan by her side. He never overshadowed her, never imposed his wealth or status, but offered support in ways that were thoughtful and respectful. Bills were easier to manage, small surprises brightened her day, and moments of genuine care reminded her that she was not alone. She appreciated his presence not for what he could give her materially, but for the patience, understanding, and encouragement he provided. Ethan admired Layla daily. Her resilience in the face of life's challenges, the kindness she extended to everyone around her, and the unwavering care she showed for her brother inspired him deeply. He realized that true strength was not measured by wealth or power, but by compassion, empathy, and the ability to face life's hardships with grace. Every act she performed, no matter how small, only deepened his affection and respect. One afternoon, Layla noticed that Ethan seemed a bit quieter than usual. He was seated at their usual table, his notebook open, but his gaze lingered on the window, lost in thought. Concerned, Layla approached and asked softly, "Is everything okay?" Ethan looked up and gave a small smile. "Just thinking about the future," he said. "About how much has changed since we first met, and how grateful I am that we found each other." Layla smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. "I'm grateful too," she said. "I never imagined someone would care so deeply, not just for me, but for all the small parts of my life." They sat together for a while, talking about the life they were building. They discussed dreams that once felt distant, traveling together, creating a home that felt like a sanctuary, and supporting each other's goals and passions. Their conversation was filled with hope and excitement, tempered by the understanding that life still held challenges, but with each other, they could face them more confidently. As the seasons changed, their bond became even more resilient. Summer turned to autumn, and the city streets shimmered with the colors of falling leaves. The diner continued to be a hub of activity, but within its walls, Layla and Ethan found comfort in each other's company. The regular customers noticed the change in her demeanor, the subtle glow of happiness that had replaced the weariness of past months. They saw a woman who had found someone who valued her for who she was, who supported her without diminishing her independence. One day, Layla's younger brother returned home from school with news of a small achievement, a recognition for his efforts in a school project. Layla beamed with pride, and Ethan shared in her excitement, offering encouragement and praise for both of them. These moments, though simple, reinforced the sense of family and partnership that had grown between them. Layla realized that their life together was more than just a romantic connection. It was a foundation for love, support, and shared growth.